While we're certainly not discouraging anyone from homeschooling, when it comes to your child who has a disability, there certainly are some risks that we want you to know about, and so that's what we want to inform you about.
Right, and one of the big risks, really, is that ultimately you may make a decision that either your child's disability is beyond something that you can provide for at home or without the support of your school's funds or services down the road, or your child may have developed a disability after you've begun homeschooling him or her, or over time you're becoming more aware that in fact this is a disability as you're homeschooling your child, and then you go to your public school and say, okay, now I'd like to have you identify my child, etc. That's where the risks come in, and here's where I see them, at least in my practice. Many of the times when a school district is trying to decide whether or not a child has a disability that requires special education services or that requires accommodations, they're going to be asking a number of questions, and there's many checklists that states will come up with for various eligibility categories. So, you know, if a child has a specific learning disability, as an example, one of the questions often posed is what we're seeing in terms of the performance of the child related to a disability, or are we seeing something that is a result of environmental or circumstantial causes, or causes like not having received previous education? So an easy example of something like that might be a child who moves to this country from a country where they don't have a public education system and they've never received instruction, and now they're in, you know, second grade or something, and we're taking a look at test results, and what looks like a learning disability may not in fact be a learning disability at all. It's just that this child's never been instructed on how to read, okay?
Right.
And so we don't, as a society, and we certainly don't give funding for situations and like that where it's not disability related, it's related to a lack of instruction. And that's just one example. In a situation where a family has made the decision to homeschool their child, unless the disability is extremely easy to diagnose and something that is really without question, that a medical doctor could easily say this child has this disability, or that it's very apparent, if there's a judgment call about whether the child has a disability, many times that decision to homeschool may bite the parent in the behind later, frankly, because what the school's going to say is this isn't a disability, you just haven't been providing appropriate instruction all along. And that's a kind of hard thing to prove. Now, most states require that you have met some standard on a regular basis to demonstrate that your child is receiving an education, so hopefully you have data that can maybe refute that. But that's a tough thing to prove.
Right, and in the homeschooling world, as I've read up on, there's ways to capture that data, and one is to put a portfolio together on your child.
Yep.
And then, of course, the other way is to have standardized testing. Right. And again, if you're homeschooling, you may not have standardized testing, so you might need to rely on that portfolio. Right.
So that's one risk.
Okay.
Another risk that I've seen is that if the child has some kind of a social skill deficit, okay, that is based on a disability. So I'll just pull out an example, an autism spectrum disorder. Yeah. Very often, if not always, I'm not a doctor, but in my experience, it seems to be almost always, it comes with a core social skill deficit. I think it's one of the criteria, right, for the diagnosis. So that's related to the disability. Now again, if it's a very clear-cut diagnosis, that's one thing, but what about a situation where the family comes to the school district after maybe homeschooling a child for 6 or 7 years and wants to enroll the child in middle school or in, you know, high school or something like that, and it's not as clear-cut. Maybe it's a child with a diagnosis that's a little harder to make, and the parent is saying, well, the social skills are really behind. I've noticed that when we go to these homeschooling events that he's not interacting with his peers, or that he says really inappropriate things. And unfortunately, that is going to be one of those situations where the school's district's going to say, this is not a matter of a social skills deficit that's disability related. Your child hasn't been around other kids. They haven't practiced that. It's just another avenue that the school district may later be in a position to take because unfortunately you don't have the evidence as to how they did in a larger environment per se. And again, many individuals who choose to homeschool their children do participate in group activities and community-based groups, homeschooling groups, outings, and things of that nature. So again, you just want to have some data to show that in fact this is not, it's not as if your child's been stuck in a room for 6 or 7 years. In fact, we do these things and I can demonstrate that this is a problem. Another risk, and along the same lines of homeschooling your child who has a disability, is that unless it's very short period of time that you've done it. If you do ultimately return your child to the public schools and give the school district an opportunity to educate your child who has special education needs, and it doesn't work out, or you don't feel that he or she is making progress, which happens frequently, then in that situation, if you want to challenge the program the school district has offered, you're going to be met, unfortunately, with an argument on the other side. Well, he or she missed out on all of those years of special education instruction, and therefore, of course, we can't expect the level of progress we might have expected if you hadn't homeschooled him or her. I find there is somewhat of a bias out there. I have had a case, at least one, where the child had been homeschooled for many years prior to enrolling in their public high school, and we had a dispute, and it was very clear that there was a perspective that, you sort of that philosophy, you broke it, you bought it kind of thing. Well, you've been educating your child all of these years at home. You can't come after your school district later. Legally, you can, but unfortunately, it is a bias, and it's something you need to realize is a risk.
So once again, we're not trying to discourage you from homeschooling your child with a disability. We just want to make you aware that there are some risks out there, and we thought you should know about them.